Now, tonight the talk is about basic financial literacy training, and our guest speaker is Tony Copple, that young man on the right there. He has his own radio station. He is a financial advisor by training, and is currently busy with a missionary work in Worcester, but he's originally from. If you want to connect with Tony, you can take a screenshot of this. You can then send him an email afterwards, or you can contact him on his cell phone number that you have in front of you.
So, as I'll explain a little later, I've been a financial planner for quite a long time, and I believe that there is a problem in the personal financial planning industry worldwide, not just here in South Africa, absolutely not. Advisors, people like I have been, are well compensated for working with the already rich, but unfortunately, what we really need to be doing, I think, is helping the poor. They're the ones who need better financial planning. The reason for this is to maximize the income of advisors and the profits of their organizations, not surprisingly. But here's a question for you. Shouldn't an ethical business be more concerned with providing service to customers or products to customers than compensating their employees? That's quite a point for discussion. I'm not going to go into it. I personally believe that it's more important to provide a good service and products than, that is, a higher level of importance and priority than compensating their employees or making profits. Sometimes the cost of an hour's consultancy with a fee-for-service advisor is prohibitive for the poor. This problem helps the rich get richer and the poor stay poor. There we are. In South Africa, there's a majority of extremely poor citizens without money or skills. In an effort to relieve poverty, the government provided free housing in townships and grants for those with no work and baby bonuses. While this stopped starvation, it also reduced the need for the poor to solve the problem themselves with small businesses, as is the case in India, for example, very widely entrepreneurial. And today we see able-bodied people standing around on street corners in townships rather than looking for jobs or starting businesses. Many develop an attitude of entitlement. This is sometimes apparent when they see no reason to thank you for any help you may offer. It's just assumed that that's what they deserve. However, you will now be targeted for more help. Without work experience, it's very hard to keep a job. The exception to all this are the criminal elements. Natural business leaders and inevitably gangs were formed to exploit the defenseless, targeting children with free drugs and drawing them into gangs and sooner or later into prisons. What could make a difference to this situation is financial literacy, which is strangely not taught in schools or even universities anywhere in the world, to my knowledge. I may be wrong, but that's been the situation thus far pretty widely. You can learn from books or from financial advisors or even some government programs. I was an advisor for 25 years, and as a Christian, I attempted to help people in debt and other troubles, as well as advising the middle class and the rich. Financial planning for people in serious debt can still generate commissions. Coming to South Africa in 2017 as a missionary to children and prison inmates, I also hoped to offer financial planning advice to the poor. We often give small amounts of money to near-starving children, but when their parents start asking for larger amounts of money, I would say no, unless they would take a 1-hour course in simple budgeting and saving. But no one was interested until I met David. David has a whole chapter written about him in Irena Fonteventa's wonderful book, From the Guttermost to the Uttermost. I don't know if you can see that. Which is the story of the kibbutz in the Worcester township of Rudeval. It describes his life as a gangster. Then he did some YWAM courses and has been a strong Christian since those days. Though he never again had money after leaving the gangster life, he's never used illegal methods for earning a living either. One day he asked me to lend him some money, as he had before, and my condition was that he would let me have a financial planning session with him and his wife. Not only did they enthusiastically welcome this session, they even let me record it for our internet radio station, CWCP. It went out on the 21st of February, 2019, and I strongly recommend that you listen to it in full. It's about half an hour. Here is a 10-minute segment which illustrates key aspects.
A lot of people where we live in Worcester have financial problems. So I want to introduce you to two of my friends. I'm going to call them Bob and Mary because they can give us the kind of feeling of what it's like for them to be in this financial situation. Hello, Bob and Mary. Welcome to CWCP Radio.
It's a pleasure being here.
Nice to meet you.
Now, you recently got married. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our friends were all happy that you got married. And you've asked me if I can give you any advice in relation to your financial situation. Can you confirm that your monthly income is about 1450 rands?
Yes,
around
sir.
that. And your expenses are about 2360.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that may be just 1 month, every month is different, but we're just working in general amounts here. And if anybody wanted to write down those two figures, they will immediately see there's a problem. But let me ask you, Bob, what kind of things you feel is obviously necessary to make your situation better?
What is necessary for me is to find a way to stop this account at the loan company and to try to get an income and so to stabilize my financial situation.
So from that, I understand that you are having to borrow money each month just to make up the shortfall, and you're paying interest on that money.
Yes, I have to, I don't actually stop paying the loan. I have to go and borrow again.
Yeah. And how much interest are you paying?
I'm paying 30% on what I'm borrowing.
Yeah. Mary, we've just discovered that your expenses are far higher than your income. Tell me, in general terms, what do you need to do to change that situation?
For me I will actually find a job at the moment. I'm actually looking for a job to make it much better and also to help my husband Bob to make the situation better so that we don't have to land up all the time in loans, because it's actually very difficult at the moment now for us.
So you don't have a job at the moment?
No, I don't, because one reason I don't have an ID now, and ID also costs a lot of money.
Another subject I wanted to bring up is people who get into this kind of situation that you're in, they sometimes do things that make it even worse for them. For example, they turn to drink.
Exactly.
So true, yes.
Because the only way they can have some peace in their minds is to be drunk.
Exactly.
Otherwise, life is just one big worry all the time.
Exactly.
Now, some of them will turn to drink. We see evidence of that here every 2 weeks when people are paid.
Exactly.
That's what they do. And then even worse, they're turning to drugs.
Drugs, yeah.
And where are they getting the drugs from? Well, even if they have just a little bit of money, that's where it's going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably at this stage of our little talk, I should be giving you a little feedback of something that you can do in your situation.
Thanks.
And the kind of thing that is fairly clear to me from the figures and that you've kindly shared with me are, number one, Mary is not working. She's not working because she doesn't have ID.
Yeah.
So she can't get a job except in some kind of jobs which she probably wouldn't want to work for.
Exactly.
So an ID would cost her 400 rands. And this 400 rands is stopping her from getting a job. Now, she's perfectly capable. She has training. She's worked in a pharmacy. She can be a pharmacist's assistant. It seems to me the first thing that you should be working on, the two of you, is helping Mary to find that job. And if she got a job that paid her 1,000 rands in a month, then she could afford to pay for the ID. So that would be something. That would be the kind of charity that she should not feel bad about asking for. If there's someone wanted to help her, they could pay for the ID, and then she'll be able to pay them back. So that's one thing I would say, and that's to do with income. The only kind of income change that would help you, Bob, would be to just find another position doing some kind of work you're used to. Yeah. And move to somewhere where you could earn more money than you are at the moment. Yeah. And what that means, that means searching for a job. And it's a full-time job to search for a job. Yeah. But you should nevertheless, you should be trying to do that. You should be looking in the newspapers. If you have a friend with internet, you should be looking for anyone that's looking for labor at the moment. And there are plenty of people who are. Often I've spoken to people, yes, they need help desperately. I know a doctor, for example, and his assistants, two of them, left. He desperately needs doctor's assistants. Maybe I should introduce him to you.
Yes, maybe, why not? That would be super.
Why are we talking like this? Because out there are solutions. There are jobs. There are people who need people. It's just a question of finding them. Now I'm going to just say one more thing in terms of expenses. I said earlier that I think you're living at the minimum amount of expenses that you could. Exactly. But I'm giving you a list here, I'm looking at it, where for the next few weeks, I want you to write down every single thing you spend. Anything that's more than 5 rands. And most things are more than 5 rands these days. Yeah. Please be deliberate about this, because I'm going to come back and see you, and we'll see what you're spending your money on. Now, in your cases, I don't think I'm going to find anything that you can possibly stop paying, because from what I know about you, you're already stopped. But if there are listeners here who have a problem, their money is just going, and they don't know where it's going, then please, please, please start listing everything you spend, and just doing it will reduce the amount of expenditure. Exactly. It's a psychological thing, but it's totally true. So that's, if you don't remember anything else from this interview, do that. It doesn't cost you anything. It definitely will save you some money. So just tracking your expenses. And you may say to me, well, okay, I'm not in a bad financial situation, but I track our expenses, or to be more accurate, my wife tracks our expenses. And when I come, every time I go to the store and buy something, she immediately takes the receipt and she puts it in on the computer. So if I'm doing that, why can others? Everyone should be doing it. And I'm not doing it, I'm doing it for a number of reasons, but I know this is something that every single person should be doing.
Yeah. And also because I think, I believe because when we are in difficulties, we are too proud to admit that we need help.
Yes.
Because if I don't admit that I need help, so my problem will just escalate each time, getting worse each time. So if I can advise others too who are listening, please don't hide what is happening to you. Go and look for help. Don't be too proud, because pride is not going to change the situation.
Yes.
What is going to change the situation is openness and looking to be helped, really. Yeah. Because you can only be helped if you want to be helped.
Yeah. Well, I have great hope for both of you, because I think your attitude is right. Yeah. You're realistic, you know you have a problem, and you're determined to solve that problem. And you will, with God's help. So thank you for talking to me, because sharing this with other people via this radio will help other people who don't have anyone to talk to. And on that note, I think we'll finish this interview. I thank Bob and Mary, not their real names, very much for their kindness in sharing their situation so that we can perhaps help other people. God bless you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony.
So there were some basic financial skills mentioned even in that 10-minute clip of that interview. Firstly, that when expenses exceed income, that leads to misery. You'll find that in one of Charles Dickens's books. It's a well-known statement. Secondly, that there are always potential solutions that will help to some extent if you can just find them. They may not be attractive, but you can pick the least bad solution to your problem. Thirdly, that to do that, advice is necessary because financial tactics are not always common sense. Fourth, that the first discipline to curb expenses is to record all of your expenses. Now, there's a number of other things that our brothers and sisters in the township should somehow be taught, but no one is taking the trouble. For example, understanding that money is not just for spending. I've met many people who, as soon as they get a coin in their pocket, rush off to a store to spend it. The idea of not spending it never occurs to them. Second, avoid payday loans, huge industry which is gouging the poor. Start saving a percentage of any income received when you receive it. That's when you get the money, put aside an amount, probably 10%, don't spend it. And don't just look for a job and be at the mercy of an employer, but instead consider becoming a business owner. Don't start a payment plan that you won't be able to keep, and remember that those who don't work don't eat. The fact that poor people don't attempt to learn financial planning merely shows that they are the same as others all over the world who haven't been approached by a financial planner. But once their eyes are opened, they could be ready to attend a micro-business course and start saving, or many other things. Our YWAM here in Worcester runs such courses and many other personal development courses, and not just faith-based. Though, as we heard from Maurice Ruddick a couple of weeks ago, we know that all you really need to run a business is in Deuteronomy. One thing that attracted me to GIG is the free membership route, offering financial literacy. When free satellite Wi-Fi arrives, smartphone users will have access to it. There are plenty of smartphones in the townships, many being stolen goods. Just as I don't work for Mobicel, but I will advertise that they have a phone called a Glow, G-L-O, at 399 rands, which is really excellent. I bought 2 of them recently, so I've checked it out in detail. Highly recommend it. That's about half the price you'd expect to pay for a smartphone, even in South Africa, and about tiny fraction in my country. But even when someone acquires a smartphone, most can't afford data and airtime. So why aren't there Wi-Fi hubs in townships? I don't know. Why isn't Vodacom doing a little bit of good work for a change? In my experience, there are a few individuals in the population, some as young as 14, who have been born blessed with an entrepreneurial spirit. Trevor Noah is an example. This isn't a product of school education. If one can seek out and find these people whilst they are still teenagers, they can lead their families to a better life, even possibly a multi-generational better life. God has distributed natural smartness more or less equally throughout the world's population. Smart people are not only found in affluent communities. The rest of us have to work to become smart. So here's the challenge for us. As you learn basic principles from GIG and other sources, spare a thought for those bright kids in the townships. They could be future business and political leaders for this country. Heaven knows we need them. But most of them don't even know they're smart because no one ever told them, certainly not their parents. It takes one to know one. Among the township families I have got to know, the children are far more resilient than children in affluent societies, particularly in the West. And the teenagers are uniformly smarter and more determined than their parents, or usually their parent. Sadly, in the townships, the smarter ones will get recruited into gangs who recognize smart. I've met many of them a little later in the youth center at Bronfly Corrections Center. And it's so sad that they're locked up when with the skills I see in them, they could be building businesses. The attitude of the middle class towards township dwellers in South Africa, in South African towns, is never to ever think about them. That's my reading from what I've noticed so far. And I call that economic apartheid. And unless it changes, watch out for another revolution. Gig clubs can be run in townships, but not many middle-class citizens would go into homes in formal settlements, let alone informal settlements. So I'm not making a plea for you to become missionaries in townships. But as you set up gig clubs, why not make inquiries from social service departments to let them know that you might be interested in having some folk from townships to learn entrepreneurship and financial planning. You may even have to subsidize their membership fees, but it would be worth it. It could turn around not just one individual, but their family, their children, and even their grandchildren.